On this UN World Refugee Day, a closer look at the challenges of helping the millions who have been displaced from their homes. Why is it taking so long to rid the world of polio? And a global fast food giant is now hiring on Snapchat. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, terrorists struck in Somalia Tuesday, killing at least 10 people and wounding 20 others. A Somali official says Tuesday's attack occurred when a suicide bomber posing as a milk delivery van driver detonated explosives at a government building in Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the heinous act. Al-Shabaab frequently launches attacks in Mogadishu and other areas controlled by Somalia's federal government. It wants to force out African Union peacekeepers, topple the Western-backed government, and impose its strict version of Islam. In an attack last week, Al-Shabaab fighters killed at least 19 people in a car bomb and a gun attack on a hotel and nearby restaurant in Mogadishu. Democratic Republic of Congo security forces and a militia fighting against them have killed over 3,000 people in the central Kasai region since October. That's according to the Catholic Church. Church officials, citing their own sources in the remote territory bordering Angola, say the army has destroyed 10 villages, battles to stamp out an insurrection. The church also accuses the Kamwina and Sampo militia of killing hundreds of people, destroying 4 villages and attacking church property in a campaign to drive out central government troops. No comments yet from the militia or Democratic Republic of Congo's army, which has dismissed accusations of excessive force in the past. In a world where violence forces thousands of families to flee for their lives each day, the United Nations seeks to bring attention to the world that the global public stands with refugees. On World Refugee Day, held every year on June the 20th, the UN commemorates the strength, courage and perseverance of more than 22 million refugees. VOA's Zlati Tsahok has our report.
In the past few years, many people fled Syria because they came under attack by one of the sides in the 6-year civil war, or by Islamic State militants who took power in the country's northeast. Islamic State has been losing territory and power in recent months, but people who have fled the terrorists are not sure they can go back.
If the security situation does not calm down, we won't go back. Where would we live? How could we eat and drink? Those who lost their houses can't work or have big families. What would they go back to do?
Many of the refugees live in UN-operated tent cities while they await resettlement to a third country. Jordan, a country of 10 million people, is home to almost 700,000 refugees. Some of them are victims of torture and abuse. An international group of lawyers is helping 50 of the most vulnerable refugees in Jordan.
What I say to the client is, we will help you until you're self-supporting. We will help you until you're on your feet and able to take care of yourself. And that could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be a life.
Refugees depend on public and private donations. As their numbers grow, the funds to support them become insufficient. The UN Refugee Agency has made repeated calls on the international community for more donations. It has now obtained permission from religious leaders in several Muslim countries, enabling their citizens to donate to refugee programs. Muslims are customarily expected to give alms to the state to help the poor. But now people in some oil-rich countries will be able to support refugee programs instead.
Through this program, the donations go 100% full and directly to the refugees and do not go through any cuts at all in comparison to other funding programs in UNHCR, where donations go through a 7% administrative tax for the sake of the organization.
But in a world where every minute nearly 20 people are forcibly displaced from their homes as a result of conflict or persecution, the need for support outpaces the supply. Zlati Tsahok, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for more on this World Refugee Day, I'm joined by Mark Kiano. He's a senior advocate and UN liaison at Refugees International. Mark, welcome to Africa 54.
Thanks for having me.
Now, first, if we focus on Africa, where you pay a lot of attention to, what is the overall assessment of the refugee situation?
Well, globally, we're at an unprecedented time period where you have 65 million people displaced, about 22 million who have crossed borders, and the situation is particularly acute in Africa. The situation in South Sudan, where conflict has been ongoing for years, has caused nearly 1 million people to flood into Uganda. You have continuing violence, as you saw in Somalia, combined with drought, people fleeing into Kenya and Ethiopia, let alone ongoing crisis in Burundi. And in southern Congo, there's recently been about 30,000 Congolese have flooded into Uganda. So it's a region where both, there's serious conflict and also neighboring countries looking to provide support for those who are fleeing.
Yeah. A number of our viewers say that it appears that sometimes the world gets desensitized about the plight of people, particularly in Africa, including refugees. There's a little more attention paid to people in other parts of the world when they're in the same situation. What is your thought? Is it fatigue, or is it just that perhaps the value is a bit less on the continent?
It's a great question. I think that, it depends on the situation. I think that that people, to be quite blunt, I mean, people get more connected to a situation where they feel they can relate to it. And so maybe when people in the Western world see people from Syria fleeing, and they see someone a little more close to them culturally, they might feel a bit more empathy, whereas the disconnect from Africa, unfortunately, is there. But, in reality, I think that there's a great number of Africans who have resettled as refugees in the U.S., and a number of them who have gotten to know. And I think the more people here in America who can meet African refugees and to see all the good that they're doing now that they're here, I think that'll connect people to the continent more.
Yes. On this particular day, what is it you would like people to really think about as relates to refugees?
Well, part of the focus of the day is certainly acknowledging the severity of the crisis, which we've talked about, and looking at where we can find solutions for areas that are continuing in conflict. But at the same time, it's acknowledging the positive things that are being done. So when you have a country like Uganda, which despite the incredible amount of people fleeing into its territory, keeps its borders open, maintains freedom of movement, and supports access to work. Ethiopia is doing a similar thing. Kenya has kept its borders open for decades. So I think that acknowledging the positive things that people are doing and trying to emulate that is important.
Globally, there has been a lot of talk about cuts to funding to the UN and other agencies that are, supporting refugees, especially from the United States. Why should the United States continue supporting and funding those organizations?
The U.S. is the richest country in the world, yet only spends about 1% of its budget on foreign aid. So it's still just a fraction of what we could spend. And now there's threats to that amount, which would have devastating impact in terms of support to refugees. But I think it's the fact that we're all in this together, that no one is born expecting to become a refugee. World events change and areas become destabilized. And I think that part of what's so, I think, encouraging in certain parts of Africa is that communities in DRC, for example, in Congo, are more than welcome to receive Burundians because they think that at some point maybe they'll be forced to flee into Burundi. So it's showing solidarity with the world and showing that we're all in this together.
We all need to feel empathy, and hopefully things will change for everybody so we can all live as free people. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, Mark Chiano is a senior advocate and a UN liaison at Refugees International here in Washington. Now, French police say the driver of a car parked with explosives that slammed into a police van on Monday is dead. The incident happened in Paris's popular Champs-Élysées shopping district. No one else was injured in the attack. Police added that a rifle, handguns and gas bottles were also found in the car. France's counterterrorism prosecutor has opened an investigation into the incident. The 31-year-old man was known to authorities as being potentially linked to extremism. Interior Minister Gérald Collomb says the incident proves that France's state of emergency in the face of terror attacks should be extended.
pour celles et ceux qui s'interrogeaient sur la nécessité.
To those who are still wondering about the necessity of having such laws, today we see that the state of France needs it and that we want to efficiently protect our fellow citizens. We must be able to take a certain number of measures which allow us to prevent and follow individuals like this one, and so to prevent attacks, whether they be aimed at civilians or security forces.
Well, the state of emergency has been in place since 2015 and is set to expire next month. But Colombe says he will be presenting a bill to extend it until November. Still, their talks begin this week on Britain's exit from the European Union, which will leave the bloc with only one heavyweight military power, France, as Henry Ridgwell reports. Moves by the EU toward a common defense policy is raising fears in Britain that it could be frozen out of future security arrangements.
Europe's security is at a turning point. Threatened by Russian aggression in Ukraine and Islamist militancy on its southern and eastern borders, the bloc is about to lose one of its major military powers.
After Brexit, France becomes the most important military power in continental Europe. And I think that European security arrangements will have to reflect that.
Currently, 4,000 French troops are fighting Islamist militancy in North Africa. President Emmanuel Macron wants EU allies to do more.
I want to strengthen those European partnerships, in particular with Germany, and ensure that the German engagement intensifies.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel does not want European security tied to a Franco-German military alliance, says Lucas.
Because she's very keen to keep America fully involved in the defence of Europe.
The European Union is establishing a command centre and $560 million defence fund, part of an emerging common defence policy.
We are not suggesting in any way to substitute, duplicate or compete with NATO. This has to be clear.
NATO has deployed several thousand troops in Eastern Europe to deter Russia. The European Union is no substitute, says Michael Wolfson of the University of the German Armed Forces in Munich, who spoke to VOA via Skype.
Most of the continental European armies are simply unprepared for any military intervention, with the possible exception of the French armed forces. But the Bundeswehr is completely overloaded, underfinanced and under-equipped.
Britain has long objected to an EU military force, but as Brexit talks begin, closer military integration is already underway and France is taking the lead. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, global polio updates. Stay with us.
I'm Jeff Selden, and I work the National Security Beat. National Security Beat is anything that affects the national security of the United States, from counterterrorism to surveillance to even relations with Russia. It's one of the most fascinating beats you can have. It's probably one of the more important beats that you can cover because it touches on so many areas of the world, so many areas of people's day-to-day lives. I'm Jeff Selden, and my beat is national security.
Well, it's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with a global polio update. Lino.
Top players in the fight against polio recently gathered to make a global pledge of $1.2 billion to ensure that the drive toward eradication remains on track. Rotary International and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation led the fundraising conference that saw $1.2 billion in pledges for polio, nearly closing the $1.5 billion funding gap needed to pursue final eradication. However, just days later, the Democratic Republic of the Congo reported 2 separate outbreaks where 4 children were paralyzed by the virus. The DRC outbreaks came a week after an outbreak was reported in Syria. Both countries had been considered polio-free by the World Health Organization. Joining me live via Skype from Evanston, Illinois, for an update on polio eradication efforts is Carol Pendak, Director of the Polio Plus program at Rotary International. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So we have some good news and some not so good news. Let me start with the outbreak. What is your take on this? Is this considered a setback? If not, what does this mean for the global polio eradication efforts?
Right, thank you. Well, it's very disappointing, these outbreaks of vaccine-derived virus. In very rare cases, the weakened virus that is contained in the oral polio vaccine, especially in areas with low immunization rates, can begin to circulate and act like the wild polio virus and cause paralysis. This is very, very rare. And like an outbreak of wild polio virus, the program is ready to respond with vaccination campaigns to ensure that it doesn't spread further. So while disappointing, it does not mean that we are off track for the eradication of polio.
Now, let's talk about funding, the recent funding expanded agreement between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Rotary International. Tell us a little more about that and how is this going to impact future work?
Sure. The Gates Foundation and Rotary are building on a 10-year relationship that we have already. And on June 12th in Atlanta at the Rotary International Convention, Rotary announced that it would commit an additional $50 million every year for the next 3 years, and the Gates Foundation committed to matching that 2-to-1. So with $150 million from Rotary, an additional $300 million from the Gates Foundation, together we're going to be bringing an additional $450 million to the global polio eradication effort. But joining us at that event was Canada with a commitment, the United Arab Emirates, Japan, Germany made a commitment. So together we received pledges of $1.2 billion.
So we see the financial commitment there, and this is good to hear. But clearly, money alone is not enough. Where is the fundamental problem in ending polio once and for all?
Right. Well, funding is obviously very important to fully implement the program. What's really important now at this stage is to ensure that the disease surveillance systems that are in place are strengthened to be able to detect any possible cases of polio, and that all children are reached with the polio vaccine. And that means reaching children that are on the move. There are some highly mobile populations, children that are being displaced by conflict. So being able to fully reach all children with the vaccine and the political commitment to make it a national priority is important.
So quickly, are there some innovations to be explored moving forward to ensure that we're really getting there?
I think some of the innovations are how do we really track communities to ensure that we know where all the children are. And so there are efforts using GPS, micro-planning for communities, using female health workers to reach the children who are known to communities, who are well trusted by the communities.
Okay, Carol Pendak, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
And that was Carol Pendak, Director of the Polio Plus program at Rotary International. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lenore, thanks a lot. Now be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, according to the United Nations, agriculture has the potential to reduce African poverty 2 to 4 times faster than any other sector. Experts say that is because it employs nearly 2/3 of the population on average, with women producing up to 80% of the food. Through the agricultural value and supply chains, the sector interacts with technology, logistics and energy, where it can create new income opportunities. Information and communications technologies can be used to link producers with markets and clean energy deployed to power food processing, and therefore adding value and employment on both sides. Across the African continent, young Africans are using technology to help in the progress and development of the continent. In recognition of that, the King Bedouin Foundation has awarded its 2016-2017 African Development Prize to 3 young Africans who are tech entrepreneurs who are driving social change across the continent. One of the 3 winners, Farmerline, which is a Ghana-based agriculture data platform that connects farmers and enables them to share information. To tell us more about that platform, I'm joined by Aloysius Atta. He's a co-founder of Farmerline. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations. Now, first tell us briefly what Farmerline does.
So like you rightly mentioned, farmers in Africa must increase production to feed the 9 billion people that will be on the planet. So Farmerline's mission is to make these farmers, to help them to become successful entrepreneurs by connecting them to information, markets, and innovative finance. And we do all this by using mobile and web technologies, to help farmers to access information, to access market, and also finance in order to produce and sell more food.
Yeah. Now, people, when they hear technology, they think of connectivity, they think of gadgets. Now, how do you connect farmers across Africa, some of them who are perceived to be not necessarily technology savvy?
We work in 10 countries, and in Ghana, most farmers have access to mobile phone. In fact, the mobile phone subscription in Ghana is more than the total number of people. So people have access to a mobile phone that can receive phone calls and also make SMS. And Farmerline leverages this medium to send weather forecasts, market prices, and good agriculture practices to farmers on their mobile phone in audio. So farmers who cannot read and write can access the information in places without connectivity.
I saw you say somewhere that through your platform, farmers are able to increase their productivity by about, what, 5%? Question is, how? How does this happen?
So yeah, we did a small study with fish farmers in Ghana, and we helped them to increase their revenue by 50%. And it's very simple with fish farmers. The Ghanaians eat a lot of fish. The demand is very high, so the market is already there. So basically sending information to fish farmers to help them to be very efficient in feeding their fish, help them to reduce the cost of feed, and also help them to also increase productivity, because overfeeding your fishes will lead to large fish kills, and that hurts the investment of these farmers. So basically sending very simple messages to them 3 times a day to advise them on the right quantity of fish or feed to feed the fishes actually makes a lot of difference in their productivity and hence revenue.
What are some of the challenges you're facing? What kind of help would you like to see come to you and others who are engaged in those kind of very progressive ideas?
We are very thankful for the King Bedouin Foundation for giving us this platform and also this opportunity. But then beyond this, the biggest challenge has always been that grassroots-led ventures build their businesses for 4 years, and after 4 years, they need between $500,000 to $2 million, to scale the investment, to scale their initiatives to multiple countries. In that space, it's very difficult to find local investors in Africa to write check for impact-led ventures like Farmerline. So it's actually very hard to attract investment. Big checks between $500,000 to $2 million to take our innovations that are working at a regional level to the entire continent. So, access to capital for grassroots ventures is a very big challenge.
Now, I've heard that there's kind of similar apps in other countries. How are you avoiding duplication, or at least perhaps using what you have already to enrich or strengthen the experience across the continent?
Exactly. The value, the way we scale our technology is basically working with existing systems. So when it comes to the agricultural food sector on the continent, we work with global food buyers that are buying from the continent. We work with farm input companies that are selling to farmers. We work with governments, the ministries of food and agriculture. We work with the government of Ghana, at a very large scale. We also work with NGOs that are well funded and are already working with farmers. So we strategically position ourselves to work with businesses and organizations that already have access to a large network of farmers. And then we use our tech to help them to reduce time and also to reach a lot more farmers at a fraction of the cost of their traditional in-person techniques. So that's what we do. We try to complement the existing system. Oh, great. Thank you very much. Is Aloysius, right? Thank you very much for joining us today. Well, that's Aloysius Atta. He's a co-founder of Farmerline. He's a Ghana-based agriculture data platform that connects farmers and enables them to share information. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, McDonald's turns to social media to recruit summer employees. We'll be right back.
Welcoming them in their schools, their workplaces, their societies.
Who are you? Take away my... وكانوا الاتوبيس برضه مضروب قدامنا.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Looking for work this summer? Well, McDonald's may have a job for you. The fast food giant says it plans to hire 250,000 crew members in the U.S. To get the word out, the company is turning to Snapchat. Starting Tuesday, the company will roll out a series of 10-second Snapchat ads that show McDonald's workers talking about why they like the gig. Viewers can swipe up to go straight to the company's careers website, where they can apply for jobs at local restaurants. The chain has targeted young people for summer work in the past. Now, last year, McDonald's says it expects to hire more than 130,000 people ages 16 to 24 for summer jobs. Well, and finally, a new smartphone app in Australia is making it easier for blind and partially sighted people to enjoy this cinema. Movie reading detects where the user is up to in a film that delivers relevant audio description via headphones. Using the phone's microphone, movie reading can detect where in the movie a user is, then play the appropriate audio description track synced to the screen. Audio descriptions for TV shows and movies is nothing new, but this is the first time the technology has been made available on a smartphone, making the experience personal, portable, and more accessible. And that is what is trending today. And that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A plate is a dish that you put your food on.
Have a lot on your plate. Hey Anna, I'm having a party this weekend. You should come.
I wish I could, but my weekend is really busy. I'm baking a wedding cake, writing my article, teaching 2 classes, and oh, my parents are visiting.
Wow, you have a lot on your